Hey everyone, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we are diving headfirst into a truly masterful piece of modern sci-fi, Project Hail Mary. A recent deep dive by Cinema Hub official hit the nail on the head, highlighting exactly why this story completely redefines the whole space survival genre. And well, we're going to unpack the brilliant narrative structure that makes it tick. If you're fascinated by stories that seamlessly weave intense, rigorously accurate science with, massive universe-altering stakes, you're absolutely in the right place. We aren't just looking at what happens, we're analyzing the mechanics of the writing itself. From that initial hook to the ultimate climax, we'll see how the author manipulates pacing, tropes, and exposition to build this unforgettable narrative engine.
Okay, let's start with the hook. Just imagine the absolute visceral panic of waking up entirely alone in the pitch black of deep space, completely devoid of your memories, right? You don't know your name, you don't know your profession, or how on earth you ended up floating in a high-tech vessel millions of miles from everything you've ever known. It's basically the ultimate locked room mystery, except, the room is a spaceship, and outside is the infinite vacuum of space. But here's why this setup is just a total stroke of narrative genius. The amnesia trope is expertly deployed here to drip-feed incredibly complex scientific exposition to us, the audience. So instead of overwhelming us with a massive info dump on page 1, the author lets us discover the rules of this universe right alongside the protagonist. We are literally solving the mystery of his own mind at the exact same pace he is.
And then, the mystery deepens. The isolation becomes absolutely absolute the moment our protagonist realizes that Earth has gone completely silent. He tries the very first thing any of us would do in that situation, call home for help, only to be met with dead air. It is essentially the ultimate literal form of cosmic ghosting. This silence forces you and the protagonist to immediately understand the stakes. There is no cavalry coming to the rescue here. There's no mission control to bounce ideas off of. By severing that lifeline right off the bat, the narrative strips away any safety net. You aren't just physically cut off, you are existentially cut off. And the sheer weight of that profound isolation brilliantly sets the stage for everything that comes next.
As those memories slowly start to trickle back, the story reveals a hilariously terrifying contrast about our protagonist's identity. Humanity hasn't pinned its final hopes on some seasoned, hardened astronaut. They haven't sent a stoic military commander trained for interstellar combat. No, instead, the fate of the entire human race rests squarely on the shoulders of a junior high school science teacher named Ryland Grace. The sheer absurdity of this is a masterful writing choice. Thrusting a relatable, everyday educator into the absolute terrifying unknown grounds these massive, hard sci-fi stakes in a super accessible perspective. He isn't a superhero. He's an everyman who gets just as panicked and overwhelmed as any of us would. It makes the grand cosmic conflict feel incredibly personal, fragile, and just delightfully human.
From there, the narrative kicks into high gear, employing one of the most effective structural tools in all of storytelling, the ticking clock. And I gotta tell you, the pacing here is absolutely relentless. Within the very first hour of waking up, Grace is just trying to understand his immediate surroundings. But within a day, the horrifying truth is violently accelerated. A mysterious space phenomenon is literally killing Earth. This isn't some slow burn. It is a structural catapult. Earth scientists basically pooled all their remaining resources to send him on a desperate, one-way mission to the distant star system of Tau Ceti, because it's the only place in the known universe that might actually hold an answer. This rapid acceleration propels the second act, turning what started as a quiet mystery into a high-octane race against extinction.
Now, once he actually arrives, the story brilliantly subverts one of the oldest, most tired tropes in classic sci-fi. Usually, when a human meets an alien intelligence out in the deep, dark expanse of space, it immediately means enemies. You know the drill. It defaults to interstellar war, laser battles, colonial conquest. But this narrative, it flips the script entirely. When Grace encounters an alien ship, they aren't enemies at all. Instead, the story pivots into this fascinating intellectual puzzle. They are thrust into a scenario in mutual survival. This massive shift from a standard conflict narrative to a collaborative, scientific problem-solving dynamic is just so incredibly refreshing. It creates a much more compelling dynamic where these two distinct beings absolutely have to rely on each other's unique biological and technological strengths to solve a problem that is way bigger than either of them.
So what it really boils down to is a brutal, elegant reality: 2 species, 1 mission, and absolutely 0 time. This concept perfectly distills the entire driving force of the narrative's middle act. Think about it. You have a human and an alien, 2 entirely different life forms with completely distinct evolutionary paths, totally different sensory inputs, and unique ways of interacting with the physical universe, and they somehow have to team up. The narrative genius here is the immense friction this causes. They have to overcome massive, incredibly complex language and cultural barriers, and they have to do it in record time. Because every single second spent trying to translate basic concepts is a second closer to their respective homes freezing over entirely. That ticking clock organically drives up the tension in literally every single interaction.
And adding to that tension is the uniquely terrifying nature of the threat itself. See, the real danger isn't a malevolent alien invasion fleet or some evil galactic empire. The antagonist is a microscopic space organism. This tiny, almost invisible entity is actively destroying sunlight energy. It is quite literally eating the light of the stars and causing the temperatures of both planets to drop to apocalyptic levels. Choosing a microbiological threat over a sentient villain is honestly what elevates this into a hard sci-fi masterpiece. It turns the enemy from a character with motivations into an unfeeling mathematical inevitability. You can't negotiate with it, you can't reason with it, and that kind of relentless natural phenomenon, it is fundamentally way scarier.
The brutal simplicity of this problem creates a devastating chain reaction. If this microscopic organism continues to reproduce and consume stellar energy, Earth, along with the alien partner's home planet, simply collapses forever. The structural brilliance of this threat is its absolute inflexibility. There's no gray area here, there are no peace treaties to sign, and absolutely no compromises to be made with the microbe. It sets up a strictly binary outcome. You either figure out the science to stop this threat, or both civilizations go extinct. Done. This uncompromising reality perfectly raises the stakes for the third act, forcing the characters to push the absolute limits of their scientific ingenuity.
Yet, beyond those incredibly high stakes and the constant ticking clocks, the underlying mechanics of the story reveal a deeply emotional core. Yes, for sure, the plot relies heavily on rigorous, mathematically sound hard science and the gritty, realistic mechanics of deep space survival. But structurally, all of that hard science actually acts as a brilliant Trojan horse. It delivers a profoundly emotional story about forging a true, genuine friendship across the universe. It's all about two completely lonely beings finding common ground out there in the endless dark. Ultimately, the narrative proves that empathy and cooperation aren't just uniquely human traits, but absolutely universal necessities for survival.
But, as we all know, in space, nothing ever goes as planned. Just as the mission climax nears and that meticulously calculated solution is finally within their grasp, the narrative deploys a classic all is lost beat. A catastrophic complication arises out of nowhere, shattering their assumptions. Ryland Grace realizes that the path to victory is not going to be straightforward at all. The script breakdown highlights this late-game complication as the ultimate final test of our protagonist's character arc. Because, to actually execute the plan and send the cure back to Earth, mere scientific knowledge just isn't enough anymore. Survival suddenly demands the absolute hardest, most heartbreaking decision of his entire life.
Which brings us to a massive, provocative question. Faced with the ultimate cosmic choice, where your own survival is completely at odds with the survival of your species and the species of your newfound friend, what would you choose? Would you be able to make that ultimate sacrifice play to save two worlds, knowing for a fact you would never see your home again? It is a heavy, thought-provoking dilemma that truly tests the very limits of human altruism. And honestly, it's exactly this kind of lingering question that stays with you long after the story concludes. It perfectly demonstrates why this narrative structure is such a masterful, unforgettable piece of science fiction.